everybody. Well, in this video what I want to do is go over particularly the spinal segment. Spinal segment is just basically a cross section of your spinal cord. Okay, your spinal cord starting around here, going down almost to your belly button there. Particularly the spinal segment that most models use for illustration purposes or for depiction is the C5 spinal segment. If you feel like the back of your neck, this little bump that's very pronounced coming out back there, that's the spinous process, which is like a forked tongue, a bifid spinous process that sticks out in the back of the C5 vertebra. Okay, so here you see a C5 vertebra. This is the C5 spinal segment. Okay, you see this like butterfly looking structure, which is the gray matter. Okay, basically contains cell bodies, which are like the brains of the nerves. They process the information. And then you have this part out here, which is the white matter. Okay, which basically has myelinated axons, which allows the electricity to travel throughout the nerve. Okay, so let's name some components. Okay, shall we? See if I can go back a little bit more here. Okay, that's a little bit better. All right, so here you see the body of the vertebra. The vertebra is bone, okay, it's not nerve, and the bone kind of houses spinal cord, so it protects it. It's like armor. All right. Okay, so there's the vertebra. Here's you see the superior articulating surfaces and the spinous process, which is pointing to the back. So if you're ever confused of what is front and what is back, what is anterior, what's posterior, or ventral or dorsal, always look at the spinous process. That spinous process is going to be facing towards the back. So this is the posterior, and this will be the anterior. So now when you look at a spinal cord, you can deduce what posterior and anterior will be. So since this spinous process is posterior, then let's say this half back is posterior on the spinal segment, and this half forward is anterior of the spinal segment. And you can also apply that to the roots, which extend laterally from the spinal cord. Okay, so you see this is a root here that's coming in to the spinal cord. So electricity is going to go this way posteriorly. Okay, and then synapse on cell bodies of this gray matter. Then the cell bodies of the gray matter will go to interneurons, which are basically unmyelinated multipolar neurons, and then synapse on cell bodies on the lateral gray horn and anterior gray horn, and then their axons will merge and become the anterior root. So these kind of like string looking things here, if you were to say, okay, which one's forward, which one's anterior root, which is posterior root, well, look at the vertebra. This body is anterior, spinous process over here is posterior, so this process of elimination will say that this is the posterior root and this is the anterior root. Okay, so that's trying to orient yourself. Now I'm going to show you some models that don't have the vertebra, so it's going to be kind of hard to tell, but you can also be able to figure it out with some key structures. Okay. All right, so let's break this down really quick and simple. There's going to be 6 posterior structures, 5 anterior structures, and then 2 lateral structures. Okay. These are the 6 posterior structures. Posterior ramus. Here we have the posterior root ganglion. Here we have the posterior. Let me use my pointer. Posterior root. Okay. Here we're going to have the posterior gray horn. This will be the posterior white column. And then finally, we're going to have this little indentation back here, which is called the posterior median sulcus. And just think of PMS. Now let's do our 5 anterior structures. Anterior ramus, anterior root, goes all the way like that. Then we have anterior gray horn, anterior white column, and number 5, anterior median fissure. Now, fissure is a deep groove, so it's going to go deep inside here and leave a nice, you see a nice, if you look at the spinal cord anteriorly, you see a nice cleavage going straight up and down. Okay, because that's the anterior median fissure. All right, so those are our 5 anterior structures. Okay, let's do our 2 lateral structures. Okay, here we're going to have the lateral great horn, and then we're going to have here the lateral white column. Now they're also going to be called, the white columns can be called funiculus, okay, or funiculi, plural, funiculus singular. Okay, so the 2 lateral structures, lateral great horn and lateral white column. Well, let's do the remaining structures that I really couldn't outline, like anterior and posterior and laterals, and put everything underneath each. So here we can see the little dot in the middle, right there. That's called the central canal. And the central canal is going to contain CSF. CSF is cerebrospinal fluid, which travels up and down the spinal cord and around the brain. Inside and outside the brain, inside and outside the spinal cord. Okay? It provides like a cushion, and it also has electrolytes and nutrients in there. Okay? So CSF is in the central canal. And then you're going to have here this little, this looks like a butterfly. This is the wings, and this is like the body. So that body would be called the gray commissure. And maybe you may have to know the white commissures, which are immediately anterior and posterior to that gray commissure, which pretty much has a posterior and a gray commissure as well. Okay. All right. Any other structures? Let's see. In here, you're going to have this structure called the denticulate ligament. And the denticulate ligament is connective tissue that prevents the spinal cord from moving laterally. Okay. Okay, so let's do the meninges and spaces, which I won't be able to do that with a couple of these models, but a couple of these I will be able to. Okay, so just think of pad. You have meninges and spaces. Okay. Around the spinal cord and around the brain, you're going to have a connective tissue immediately around the brain and spinal cord. Then you're going to have a space. Then you're going to have another connective tissue, another meningeal layer, and a space, another meningeal layer, and another space. So you're going to have, around the brain and spinal cord, you're going to have layers and spaces that help cushion and support the brain and spinal cord. Okay? So that's just to give you a brief background. Okay? So let's get started. Here, immediately around, hopefully you can see from back here, and I'll repeat it with some other models. But you see this white, no you won't. Let's put, that's better. Okay, so you see this white layer? That's called the pia mater. Think of the mnemonic PAD, P-A-D, from inner to outer, or from outer to inner, DAP. But let's do from inner to outer. So we have P for pia mater. Then we're going to have a space, which is called the subarachnoid space. And the subarachnoid space is also going to contain CSF, same liquid that's inside the central canal. Okay, now you see gray, a black line in gray. Okay, this first, the most inner gray layer, can't see it, it's a little dark, but that inner gray layer is going to be called the arachnoid mater. Okay, then you're going to have this line, which is called the subdural space. And I've read recently that the subdural space doesn't exist until you get older, where these 2 meningeal layers start separating. That's why some books don't talk about subdural space, which is pretty interesting. But anyways, you have subdural space. Then here, this outer gray layer will be called the dura mater, okay, which is and that's the last meningeal layer. Then you have the epidural space, which is around here and here, which is going to contain the blood vessels and fat. Okay, further down the spinal cord, they will do an injection at the L5 around there, and that'll help numb the area, the pelvic area, so women can give their childbirth with minimal pain or no pain. Okay. All right. So we have pia, arachnoid, and dura. The spaces: subarachnoid space, subdural space, epidural space. So those are your meninges and spaces for your spinal cord. And I think that's about it. Okay. There's something here in the front. This is a sympathetic chain ganglia, and these are the rami communicans. Okay. And this is going to send a signal to your digestive organs, to your visceral organs. Okay, let's look at this real quick. Here you see, now here you can't tell with the vertebra. So what you can do is look at this bulgy looking here, that's bulgy looking thing, that's the dorsal root ganglia. So you can just deduce that anything back here would be dorsal and that would be anterior. Also notice here, this is deep groove in there. That's a fissure. Sulci are shallow. It doesn't go deep. So it doesn't go deep. It doesn't go all the way down in there, not like the fissure. So don't confuse that. So the anterior median fissure will be here. The dorsal root ganglion will be back here. So dorsal posterior, dorsal and anterior. So these are the dorsal great horns, dorsal white columns, lateral white columns, lateral great horn, anterior white columns, anterior great horn, anterior root, posterior root ganglion, and spinal nerve, which go eventually to the rami. Okay? Show you another one real quick. I have this version here as well. A good looking one here. Here, I'll just zoom in there so you can see the functions down there. General somatic, afferent, general, visceral, afferent, general somatic, efferent, general, visceral, efferent. Okay? This will be in the front, so this will be in the front. So this will be the efferent, okay? And these will be the afferent. Afferent is going towards the spinal cord. Efferent is going away from the spinal cord. The electricity, okay? So let's look at some things here really quickly again. Here you have the spinal nerve, the anterior root, the posterior root ganglion, the posterior root. Here you have the posterior white column, lateral white column, anterior white column, posterior great horn, lateral great horn, anterior great horn, anterior median fissure. Look at that fissure right in there. Posterior median sulcus is very shallow. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much it. You have the central canal. See that? Yeah. Oh yeah, you can see like this little channel right here. See? A little channel right there. That's the central canal. Okay. And then you have the gray commissure. Okay. Very nice functional model there. That's pretty cool there. If you have any questions about that, let me know. All right. Then finally, all right. So let's look at this last model here. This model is pretty cool. You see the vertebra here, the bodies, the spinous process, and inside you can see the spinal cord. Okay, kind of like the models we've been seeing. Let me put this down. Here you can see, well, since this is the body, that's anteriorly, so that's going to be the anterior great horn, posterior great horn, lateral great horn. Okay, and the spinous process is in the back. Lateral white columns, posterior white column, anterior white column. Can you see the central canal? Nope, because I can't see it. But it would be right in the middle of that gray commissure. Okay? All right, so what I'd like to show you on this is the, put that there for a second, is the meninges and spaces. Well, you know that the blood vessels in the epidural space, so this is going to be the dura mater. Here you can see the gray mater. The dura mater, the arachnoid mater, and then surrounding the spinal cord itself is going to be the pia mater. Okay, and then here you can see the dorsal root ganglion. So you know that's going to have to be posterior, which it is. There's a spinous process in the back. Spinous process, posterior root ganglion. So this is anterior root in the front with the body. This is the posterior root. Here you can see a sympathetic chain ganglia. And then eventually here you can see, let me see if it divides over here. No, this is just will be the spinal nerve. All right, so basically just wanted to show you all these different models. That's about it. Take care. Good luck. Goodbye.